Here's the Timbren. There's where the Timbren is not. This is just worse than we expected.
Well, where are we?
We're at Dirt Road Diesel in Colorado Springs, and we're having them take a look at our suspension. Like we were showing you, we've got a 3-inch tilt. So they looked at it and you know, very polite, very polite, kind way. They said, "You're
You're gonna have to beep that out."
So our leaf springs are cracked
On the right side.
on the right side, so they need to be replaced. If they only replaced the leaf springs on the right, they said we're going to start having a problem on the left side. So the recommendation, leaf springs on both sides. So we're into that, about $1,100. We have two Timbrens. We have one Timbren on the left, one Timbren on the right. The Timbren on the right is gone, like missing. So
He thought it was like it compressed and then exploded.
yeah, they don't know. All they know is it's not there. I've looked at our Timbrens before, and they were both there. So I think, like, part of me, I'm just kind of like, you know, we get another Timbren, put it in.
But the leaf springs.
But the leaf springs are crap. So no matter what we do, like, we're in this at least $1,100. Their recommendation then, they've worked with truck campers before. The owner here had his own truck camper.
He had a Lance.
And he was just like, you know, you guys need to go with airbags.
Which is what the Hellwig guy told us.
So this was the same feedback we had gotten from someone else. So now on the airbag system, we're in another $2,000. And that's putting us around, I want to say $3,200, $3,300. And then he was like, you know, you guys really should think about a swaybar, which will really help you going down the road.
Which is what the Hellwig guy said too.
Yeah, and that's not the first time we've heard that. So we're already like in the kitty, unexpected for $3,000. So we just kind of had a private discussion and said, what's another $1,000? So we're in for about $4,000 at this point on our repair. We have to flip a quarter to see who's going to call our finance person.
You are.
We're flipping a quarter. I asked last time.
No.
Bullshit. I asked last time. Yeah. No.
I always ask.
You do not?
Okay.
We have to go back to email. I'm the last one who bellied up to the bar.
Nuh-uh. It was during our quarterly meeting. I asked in our quarterly meeting.
So we have some discussion that we had off camera about this. You know, we have...
She's super kind, our financial advisor. She's wonderful. She just has our best interest out for us, and she knows how much money we have set aside for this adventure, and we're getting pretty low on the adventure funds.
So yeah, part of it too, it's not just necessarily what we're spending just on the suspension. It's also, even this morning, I'm communicating with the solar folks about, you know, beefing up our solar and adding more batteries, because we need consistent power in here, not the generator, so we can use our laptops all the time and actually work. So it's today, let's call it $4,000 plus solar, probably $4,000 or $5,000. It's expensive. So it's almost lunchtime, so we're going to go do some day drinking and have some chips and salsa and beer, and well, I guess we can cry in our beer. For some time, people have been telling us that Cupcake leans to the right. We noticed it a little bit here and there. A few of you made comments on our videos like, hey, you kind of got to lean to the right. And then at the truck camper rally, a lot of people were like, you guys lean to the right hard. So we talked with some guy who was there. I don't remember. Hellwig, a Hellwig rep, and he came in, looked at the camper, and said what his recommendations were. And we talked to somebody else, and they gave us their recommendations. But all their recommendations really were not really dealing with the issue at hand. It was how to like work around the issue. So we've kind of decided like leaf springs seem to be bad on the right side of the truck. So we made an appointment. Next week we're going to get those changed or get it looked at it and freak out about how much it's going to cost. But I thought just because it's probably hard in the videos for you to see how much it's leaning, I'm actually going to measure the difference. My unofficial method of doing this here, I'm going to measure from apex of the wheel to the base of the fender back here on each side. For easy math, let's call that 10 inches. So we're 10 inches on the left side. What do you think the difference is going to be?
I was going to say 7.5.
7.5 on this side.
Yeah, what do you say?
I'm going to say 8 because
Okay.
you said 7.5. All right, so
Oh my gosh!
7.
Yeah, right at 7.
7. So it tells us that we are leaning to the right 3 inches. So honestly, it's just 3 inches.
That's what she
I
said.
knew it. I could just feed you lines now and you just do them. So we are going to take it in, have somebody look at it. God. In our other big news today, we gave Cupcake a wash. We stopped, we passed a place, like you wash it, and it said it takes credit cards. That's what we like. Sometimes for us,
Instead of coins.
yeah, coins, we can drop 30, 40 bucks in quarters. So when you see a place that says credit cards, we jump on it. So that was the good news, was we got a wash for Cupcake. The bad news was the soap seems to have stained my hands,
Also your shirt.
my shirt, my leg.
Your shorts.
Son of a it's a car wash. Why is it staining me? And I've washed my hands
Multiple
times. Like,
Yeah.
this is just
It was the foaming brush.
foaming brush got me. Oh, and other news. Can you tell where we're at right now?
Da-na-na. Move your finger. There you go.
Our journey with our truck camper suspension didn't start the day that Dirt Road Diesel told us you're f***ed. It actually began sometime before that when we realized we were f***ed because we didn't know anything about truck camper suspensions. Bigger liars than us would sit here and tell you they did a lot of homework.
Not so much.
No, not so much. Our place we bought the truck camper from told us, here's our recommendations. Go with Timbren's. And so we did. Today, down the road a bit, we've done some homework to understand the different types of truck camper suspensions, since we were looking at actually maybe changing our truck camper suspension. So Noelle's going to tell us what are the different options for truck camper suspensions, because she's actually done a lot of homework now. I still haven't.
Well, I did homework, but that doesn't mean I could say any of it without looking at my notes. So let me tell you. So we have Timbren's. That's what we ended up with. Like Steve said, that's because that's what Boardman RV suggests. That's what they install the most on trucks. If they installed air springs, we'd likely be sporting air springs. But Timbren's are basically hollow rubber springs, and they act as a progressive spring rate. What that means is that as the load increases on them, the harder they push back. So the engineers did a whole ton of homework about the hardness of rubber and the specific shape and the specific core that's going to provide the best ride for trucks under a full load.
So different types of rubber provide a different kind of
The
ride?
hardness of the rubber and the... Oh, Jesus. Shut up. Anyways, they're also self-damping, and I think that means that they respond to the load similar to a shock absorber. That's what I know about Timbren's.
All right.
Which you've now made a mockery of.
I think I owe you
I don't think so.
a few.
Okay. Anyways, that's what I know about Timbrens. They're made out of hollow rubber springs, and they kind of act like shock absorbers.
So it's rubber, and then on the inside of that is a spring?
No, it's hollow rubber. And the hollow rubber
Oh, okay.
It becomes the spring.
Okay.
Yeah. So if your load is heavier, the spring, rubber, hardness of the rubber pushes back even more. So the next kind of suspension modification that we looked into is because our friend Vinny, hey Vinny, also Carlos, hey Carlos, and probably Chris too, hey Chris, all of those guys when we were at the Truck Camper Rally told us about SuperSprings. So they are steel helper springs, and they bolt onto your existing leaf springs, and that helps to eliminate the rear end sag. And it also stabilizes the sway and the body roll.
We talked with the folks at our RV shop about SuperSprings, and we talked with the folks at our diesel mechanic about SuperSprings. Both said they have extensive experience with truck campers, and neither were familiar with SuperSprings. So neither were particularly interested in having a conversation with us about installing SuperSprings. So
so that's why we started to do our own homework.
Yeah. So sorry, Vinny. We were trying to go with SuperSprings, but at least where we're at, it just did not seem like it was a particularly popular option.
Yeah. So what SuperSprings says is that they're an easy installation, and you can customize SuperSprings because it has varying bolt holes of the adjustable shackles, and that allows each installer to start higher on the spring rate curve. So really what that means is the higher the hole that you choose on the shackle, the more of a preload tension exists. So SuperSprings company also makes sumosprings, and that's another, I think sumosprings are a little more similar to Timbrens. They are more, their Rebel is really built for truck campers for a continuous load, and it's kind of a progressive spring, and it's designed to take vibration out of the chassis, and it also reduces body roll by coming into contact much sooner than factory bump stops do. So that actually means that they're going to work great whether you have a loaded truck camper or whether you're just driving down the road on your truck without a truck camper. So I think that's different for us with Timbrens. They're meant to always have a load, so it doesn't do anything for our truck when our camper's not on it. It does not help the smoothness of our ride or the swaying of our ride, whereas SumoSprings are supposed to work well either way. Next product that I looked into were Hellwig suspension products. Now, we really looked at Hellwig because when we were at the Truck Camper Rally, there was a representative there. He was a stand-up guy. We went to his workshop. We really appreciated what he had to say. One takeaway that we both took from him was that airbags will fail, no matter what. 100% guarantee airbags are going to fail. So that means that you don't necessarily want airbags. Well, the Hellwig guy then came over to look at our truck the next day, and lo and behold, he suggested that one of the best things for us would be airbags. So it's not a product that Hellwig sells, so I thought that made the gentleman even more believable, because he was trying to get us to go with a product that he doesn't even sell. So I think he really cared about our rig and what was best for it. He said he would go with helper springs. So Hellwig makes a helper spring, which is pretty similar to the SuperSpring, in that it sits right on top of your own truck's leaf springs, and it works to increase the load level load rating of your truck up to your vehicle's gross vehicle weight. So that doesn't mean you could haul something heavier than your stated payload, but what it does mean is that the helper springs help your stock springs reach its full potential.
Just for clarification, what's payload?
Oh, so the payload is actually what your truck can haul inside the bed.
Okay.
Most people get that confused because they get it confused with like hauling capability. So our truck can haul a whole lot more than it can carry in the bed of its truck. Any truck can. Trucks are made for hauling, and hauling stuff in the bed of your truck is kind of a bonus. Like, they figure that most people will really mostly be hauling some gravel or maybe a load to the dump, something like that. They don't really figure in truck manufacturing that you're going to be, for the most part, hauling a slide-in truck camper that could weigh up to 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, that was confusing to us when we were looking to buy the truck, understanding the difference between what is my tow capacity and what is my hauling capacity. Two completely different things.
Yeah, very different things.
And we would have the truck salespeople would quote us like crazy high numbers. Oh, like your hauling capacity is, 12,500. Stop this silliness. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Newer trucks, I think they actually give you on like the door, there's a sticker that'll tell you here is what your hauling capacity is. Our truck, we had a sticker, but it just gave us like our gross towing capacity. So we had to go backwards and do the little calculations of what could we tow, how much did the truck weigh, all that kind of crap. So it can be kind of confusing. Yeah, it can be confusing.
Yeah. Sway bars are supposed to help with porpoising and with that swaying side to side. And how it works is that it's a U-shaped bar, and it's hooked in the back on both sides of your suspension. And basically it has like they call it a torsional spring in the middle. So like when one side of your truck it goes down into a hole while you're driving a pothole or, on a gravel road, then the other side pulls on it to kind of level it back out. So it's constantly working together to keep that sway down, and it gives you better cornering ability, and it gives you pretty much just a better overall ride.
After 2 or 3 days of driving through some stiff Nevada winds, we're interested in talking about a sway bar again.
Yeah, that was white knuckle driving.
It didn't bother me at all.
As the passenger.
I had a good time. Noelle seemed really stressed and tensed, but no, not me. I was
practicing deep breathing as I was driving. In through the nose for a count of 3, out through the mouth. So the next suspension modification option that I looked into for us was torklift suspensions. So they make stable loads, torklift stable loads. We've run across lots of people who run with these, and it seems to be a pretty good option. Torklift says that they work with your truck's existing suspension to use all 4 points of it, as compared to helper springs, which may only use 2 points of your existing suspension. And while I don't really know exactly what that means, what they say is that stable loads pre-engage your factory-installed overload leaf springs so that your truck is ready for the effects of the extra weight. Basically, the stable loads start to work before your leaf springs even engage. And that means that your truck's ride is improved with reduced side-to-side sway, since the stable loads will engage the suspension earlier. Again, it's another easy to install, no drill kind of kit, and it includes 4 stable loads. It seems like it's a good solution when you have the weight of your truck camper loaded, but it also is supposed to work pretty well without the load, since there's a mechanism you can use, a hinge mechanism, that lets you disengage the stable loads. So then you're going to have a comfortable ride either with them engaged with your camper loaded, or you can disengage them for just driving your truck around town.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've been aware of as we're looking at doing suspension mods, that we can jack up our suspension however we want to. But sometimes we're also going to drive this truck without the camper on it. And if we have a super, super stiff suspension, and then we take the truck camper off, this is going to be just horrific to drive. So like today, we leave the camper on 7x24, but we're envisioning not that far down the road where we'll start taking the camper off more. So we want to make sure we don't do something with our suspension that's too stiff, and affects
daily driving of a truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. it's kind of that balance, trying to figure out a balance with any of these options. So we haven't really talked about airbags. And I did not do a lot of homework on them, honestly. And the reason for that is because like we heard at the Hellwig workshop in Quartzsite, is that they fail. We also talked to quite a lot of truck campers there at the rally, and we only met maybe a handful who run with airbags. Now, I guess that the great thing about them is that they work similar to a Timbren or to the sumosprings, in that it kind of works as a shock absorber in essence, but that's like a layman's version, right? I'm sure that somebody who is in the industry would tell you something very different, like it's not your shock absorbers. But in my way of thinking, they work similar to a shock absorber in that they're absorbing the shock of the road. So an airbag can be literally filled with air from an app on your telephone. You can add air to them, or there's also some that are a little bit, I don't know, maybe they don't work by an app, maybe they work by a small air compressor.
Yeah, well, I think your app is connecting to
your
an
air compressor,
which is connected to your airbags.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about airbags? You seem to know more than I do about them.
So the plus and minus
I'm struggling here.
Plus and minus of the airbag, on the positive side, you can adjust it depending on what your terrain is. Like you go off-road, you're in the dirt, whatever, you can adjust it.
And you could adjust it side to side. So like the right side of our camper is heavier because that's the side our refrigerator's on, our slide is on, our generator's on that side. So our right side is just heavier. Yeah.
So we could,
not because I sleep on that side.
We could actually run with different air pressures left to right. So on the right side, we could have a higher pressure to bring our truck camper back level without doing anything else to the suspension. So that's one of the good factors. The bad factor Noelle had mentioned is, that there's going to be failure. Because everyone we had talked to, almost everyone has said, yep, I've lost an airbag here or there. To me, this was not as big a concern as it was to Noelle, because quite frankly, right now we're dealing with a cataclysmic failure of the Timbren system.
That's correct.
And one of the big sales pushes from the folks before they put them on our truck the first time was, these will never fail. Well, guess what?
So
they failed. One cataclysmically failed, and one was about to cataclysmically fail.
I think that the difference is, though, that the Timbren itself, the rubber portion of the Timbren, did not fail.
We went with Timbrens this time, quite simply because that's what was available. If the airbags and the leaf spring suspension modification had been available, we would have done that. That was our first plan.
Yeah, in our time frame.
So Timbrens were really, we did it because it was something we could do, the parts were available, and the mechanics could make it happen pretty quickly. So it kind of took some of the choices out of it. We didn't want to drive cross country, which we're getting ready to do, missing a Timbren. So we had an option to put in more Timbrens. Really, that was our only option. So
yeah, in our time frame,
it was pretty easy as far as the choice.
So I think that as soon as we did, I noticed a huge difference. Like as soon as we went back onto a gravel road to go to a boondocking spot, it was a smooth ride again. And for me, it was like maybe like when we very first got them on, we didn't know the difference because we only drove a truck camper with the Timbrens on. But for the last couple of months, we haven't had that support. And any gravel road we went on, it was just bone jarring. So I think it's made a huge positive difference. What do you think?
I can tell the difference when we're going around corners. I don't feel we're not going as much side to side. I haven't noticed that much of a difference on the dirt roads. But for me, definitely on corners, I can tell a difference in the amount that the camper is swaying in the truck. So you feel it. This is a big beast driving down the road. Even though it's only a few inches difference from side to side, it matters. Yeah, it does make a difference.
So for you, the right suspension modification is going to depend on a few things. Do do you leave your truck camper on all the time? Do you, like, we're constantly on it, so Timbrens are a good choice for us. Maybe you only use your truck camper for week-long vacations and some long weekends during the year. So the truck that you own compared with, or in addition to the truck camper, and how often you have it fully loaded, all come into play for what suspension modification is right.
Budget plays into this as
Yeah,
well.
that's absolutely true.
And in fairness, the Timbrens were the cheapest option.
Yeah, it was like $500 and we're done.
Although maybe that's not accurate. I just saw someone recently, somewhere on Facebook, they had done their own version of Timbrens out of spare rubber that they had found. So I think they were pretty proud. They had put it together for like $10 each.
That's pretty cool if it works.
Yeah, if it works. But for the rest of us who are not going to do that or drink our own urine to save water, I think
or urinate in cat piss. Finny.
Urinate in cat piss?
I mean, cat litter.
So there's all kinds of ways to save money. But the Timbrens actually
brush your teeth 4 days a week. Or
on the scale of expenses, Timbrens were actually the cheapest modification that we could do.
Yeah.
Or that you could do as well, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, SuperSprings aren't too much difference in price. They're around $600.
Yeah. If
you do it yourself. So.
Yeah. We now have 2 new Timbrens on, so we're gonna measure, and it's our unofficial method here. So we're at 11. Ballpark.
Close enough. Close enough for our kind of measurements.
Yeah. Moment of truth. This side. Oh.
Wow.
About 10. 10 and a half. 10-ish. All right, so we had a 3-inch gap before. Now we have a 1-inch gap. If we remember, we've got all the extra weight on this side. We've got our slide, which is like an extra 400 pounds. And we also have our generator, an extra.
And no, not propane.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how much the generator weighs. So what is interesting though is, if we think about it, today they replaced the Timbren on both the right and the left. Seems like with this on before, we were around 10 inches. So now we're showing 12. And the reason we're actually
11 over there.
11, now we're showing 12 over here. Okay. The reason we have a difference is because the Timbren itself was worn down, the one that we still had. So we were missing one, but we also had one that was quite worn.
Oh, jeez.
So this is our Timbren that was worn. So, made in Canada. What I learned today is that Timbrens actually wear out. So their recommendation to us was probably to replace these every year to year and a half. So the reason we're getting extra height now on the left side that we didn't have before is because this whole area was worn down from our use. And what they actually showed me on this, so if we look inside, this was our good Timbren. Our bolt right here, we're actually getting ready to shear in half. So even though this was the good one, this one was also very close to a mechanical failure. So I'm going to keep this for a spare, but yeah, this would be like an emergency spare. So the other one, you can actually see the bolt sheared off. That's where our Timbren went, is our Timbren just went missing and it left the bolt on the inside. So yeah, I guess that's the summary of what happened. As far as cost, I had looked online and I found I could buy the Timbrens myself for about $335. Here at the shop, they charged us $402, so about a $70 markup, not bad. And then their labor, $125. So everything plus tax were $560 versus, let's say, easy math, $360 for us to do it ourselves. So about $200 convenience fee for them to do it. So watching them do it, yeah, I could have done it. It would have taken an awful lot of cussing under the truck, but certainly possible. If this were to happen again, I probably would do it myself, now that I've seen someone else do it. They did take a look at our leaf springs as well, and their input was that the leaf springs are just fine and they don't see any reason to replace them. So we had two different mechanics under the truck with flashlights looking at the leaf springs, and they said, no, don't replace them. So based on that, I don't think we're going to do anything to the leaf springs. So that's good. So we saved ourselves some hassle, because I'd kind of planned to do it this summer when we were at home. So for today, I think we're good and we're back on the road.